kind of reflects the river, right? How the river connects us all. And that's why we put so much emphasis on protecting that water source. And so again, my name is Ashley. I'll go ahead and pass it on to my colleague, Martin Castro.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. Buenos dias. Good morning. My name is Martín Castro. I am the Watershed Science Director, Director de Ciencias de la Cuenca, aquí en el Centro Internacional de Estudios del Rio Grande, Rio Grande International Study Center. It's a pleasure to see everyone, to meet everyone. Thank you, Professor, for this wonderful audience. I was not expecting this many people to be in attendance, so it's amazing. As Ashley mentioned, I am the Watershed Science Director here at RISC. I've been with the organization about 3.5 years. My background is I studied biology, and I previously used to work for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, which is Texas's environmental regulatory agency. It's the second largest environmental regulatory agency in the country after the EPA. And I primarily worked my background is in water resource management, surface water resource applications, a little bit of groundwater management, but anything to do with water resources, water resource planning, water resource management is sort of my specialty, and water rights as well. Here at RISC, as the director of this watershed science program, or water security program, I should say, I primarily act in a more scientific and technical capacity to basically understand what are the greatest threats to Laredo and the surrounding region's water security, and what are some projects or ways that we can combat that water insecurity. And right now, the biggest threat, and I think everyone's aware of this, is water scarcity. We live in a very water scarce region of the basin, the Rio Grande Basin, and there is simply right now, and during this very severe drought that we've been in, not enough water to go around. And so I work to come up with, to work with local and regional stakeholders, public and private entities, to come up with projects that can help make Laredo and the surrounding region a little bit more water secure. I'll talk about those in just a few minutes during our presentation, but one of the projects that I'm overseeing this year and also going into next year is we are going to be ecologically restoring a 40-acre site here in Laredo along the Rio Grande. That is going to be, we're targeting this area that has been very impacted by invasive plants, and removing those invasive plants and then reforesting, ecologically replanting native trees. That's a $2 million project that's funded by the USDA. And so it's a very exciting project that's going to help increase water quality. It's going to help increase water quantity and have all these other ecological benefits. So I'll talk about that in just a minute, but that's just an example project that I'm overseeing as part of the director of this water security program. So it's a pleasure. Thank you all so much, and great to be here.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and share my screen that we can see our presentation. If you can just give me a thumbs up to make sure that you're able to see that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start that now. Perfect. And then I'm going to start it from here. Can you all see my screen with the presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. All right, I'll go ahead and get started. So again, as mentioned, we are the Rio Grande International Studies Center, as mentioned, RISC for short. So if you ever need to refer to our organization, you can say RISC. So again, who are we? The Rio Grande International Center was established in 1994. So a little fun fact, we are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. So we're celebrating with a lot of different activities and events that are taking place. We can definitely share that with the university in case anybody wants to make the trip down here. We're actually having a humanities initiative taking place in October. We're going to have art. We're going to have a block party. We're going to have a history talk, all really revolving around the river and why it's so important to us. So I'll send that over in case anyone can join us. Again, that'll be in like about mid-October. So as mentioned, we're one of the only environmental organizations or advocacy organizations down here in South Texas. So because of that, a lot of the brunt, right, of all the different things that are taking place really does fall on us. And again, it's important that we emphasize that the work that we do is possible because of these different conversations and partnerships that we have with different entities here in Laredo and around Webb in South Texas. So I'll go ahead and pass this over to Martin to give you a little bit of information in terms of like how we stretch. So as you can see, these are our different programs, and that's why it can be quite a bit, but we'll just briefly go over this, and I'll go ahead and pass that to Martin.
Thank you, Ashley. And as Ashley mentioned earlier, yes, we have a massive portfolio of work. We created this, this visual representation of our portfolio and tried to break it up into 3 different hubs that I'll go over to that explains where our work really lies. And some of Ashley's work is located in specific areas. Some of my work is located in specific areas. So I'm going to start from the left side and move to the right as we talk about our different hubs in our portfolio. So we first, talking about our Eco Hub, this is where primarily Ashley's work lives in, or where she works from. Ashley, as she mentioned, she is our STEAM and community engagement officer. So a lot of her involvement is with youth, including the Real Research Roundup. We just wrapped up a series of summer camps earlier this year and other special programs that she oversees. We also have our nature-based programming. That's some of our older programs. Looking at that specific column, we have what we call Loving Laredo Hikes and Loving Laredo Paddles, where we work to engage Laredo's, the population in Laredo out with nature, and how to explain to them and showcase, the benefits of being outside, connecting with the river. A lot of people have, preconceived notions or misunderstandings about the river, that it's not somewhere it's safe, or you can't really approach it, or it's not somewhere you want to be. But this is these outdoor programs that we do every year is a way to showcase that. We also host a little bit of monarch. We have several gardens throughout Laredo that we manage for the endangered monarch butterfly that Ashley helps manage with volunteers. And then we also have, and Ashley can talk more about this in a couple of slides, our Laredo Birding Festival, the largest birding festival in South Texas. And then Ashley also mentioned a little bit of our cultural programming, our River Humanities conference. It's a multi-day event happening later this year later next month in October. We also have been doing a lot of work this year and past years with art activists and training people how to do activism through arts and culture and public art as well. Moving on very quickly now to the EJ Hub. EJ stands for Environmental Justice. This is a relatively, not new, but a more recent term when we talk about how environmental justice is applied to areas that have been disproportionately impacted by a number of things. Water insecurity, mismanagement of all kinds of issues, specifically in these 5 categories: air, water, climate, policy work, and community engagement. With our climate program, which deals mainly with air and climate, we have, of course, we're talking about PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5. Laredo is the largest inland port in the Western Hemisphere for commercial vehicle crossings. So Laredo, for example, I think in last 2023, something like 250 billion with a B, billones worth of goods were moved through the ports of entry here in Laredo alone. Now, what that means is there is a huge amount of unexplored air pollution that hasn't really been. We don't have a baseline for those emissions coming off of, for example, majority of these crossings happen with diesel trucks, diesel vehicles. So we need to understand. We're working to understand where these emissions are coming from and how they're affecting our air quality here in Laredo through our PM 2.5 work that we're doing with EPA and NatBank right now through a number of grants. We also have a major public health threat with ethylene oxide. For those that don't know, ethylene oxide is a chemical that's used in the sterilization industry to sterilize medical equipment. We have the largest emitter of ethylene oxide here in Laredo in the entire country. There's a plant here that's been operating since 2005 that sterilizes medical equipment, but has been under the radar, has been uh, very much scrutinized, I say, in the last 3 years for these emissions that the public has just now come to realize how dangerous those are. So we're working on that. And then lastly, very quick, we're also working with our methane. We're looking at methane flaring here in South Texas. If you've ever been up to San Antonio, you've probably, or even up in going to Corpus, you've probably seen through the refineries like those big gas flares coming up. Those are flares. And we're trying to study where this flaring has been occurring here in South Texas. Here in Laredo, Webb County ranks usually in the top three for the largest the top three natural gas producing counties in the entire state, which says a lot because Webb County itself is not, population-wise, not a big county, but we produce a lot of natural gas. Moving very quickly, I talked a little bit about our water security program, the river restoration project I'm managing. We're also looking at wastewater reclamation and aquifer storage and recovery. With our climate program, this is a fairly new program. Right now, we have several grants that we're managing that we're going to be planting trees and looking at the urban heat island effect. We actually did a 1 day citizen science study earlier in August where we looked at on the ground heat temperatures throughout a single day here in Laredo that we're going to use to produce very detailed heat maps to see what are the hottest parts of Laredo. That was a study that was funded by NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. We have our climate cohort, our climate task force. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We're looking into electrification. This is something that I think everyone is probably already familiar with. Electrification, as many of you all know, or probably have inferred, is looking to be the way of the future when it comes to reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. And as I mentioned, Laredo is the largest inland port, so we have a lot of potential for electrifying our ports, our vehicles. So we're working on that. We're also looking at green workforce and renewable energy. A lot of policy work regarding Justice 40 and the Inflation Reduction Act with state revolving funds. We're also part of some working groups nationally with some of our some national organizations like the Water Equity and Climate Resilience Caucus and America the Beautiful for All. We're also doing a lot of work. Ashley does a lot of work as well as with community engagement. We have our binational riverfront project that I'll talk about in just a minute. Our work with the River Alliance that we're trying to do. We're trying to create a river alliance with neighborhoods that are impacted along the river in Laredo. We're doing a very deep community engagement work through Methodist Healthcare Ministries. That's the private philanthropic arm of the Methodist healthcare system here in Laredo in a very historic neighborhood. Of course, the border wall is a very real threat, and depending on there's an administration change, this may increase again for next year. A lot of stuff with rapid response. And then very lastly, this is stuff more internal, but we have, of course, our operations, right? With any nonprofit organization, we have to worry about budgets, human resources, HR, operations, compliance, and communication. So all of this, okay, is part of our portfolio. And lastly, at the bottom right, this is just these are more of like our core principles, right? Like what makes risk a strong advocate for environmental issues, right? We have awareness because whenever we find an issue, we have to create an awareness. We have to educate and create awareness about that issue. We do that through outreach, through campaigns. We have to collect research and data. That's at the core of creating an awareness, an advocacy campaign, and do events. Then when you have awareness, you have to take action. Now you have an issue. You've educated the people about it. Now what do you want to do about that issue? Well, what does it look like? Is it policy? Is it litigation? Is it partnerships? Is it actually building infrastructure to solve or address the issue? All of these overall will do one of two things, community impacts and create transformative change. Those are the core principles at which our organization strives to try and meet its mission, right? Which is to preserve and protect the Rio Grande. So anyways, I know that was a lot. I tried to keep it brief, but as Ashley mentioned, we have a massive portfolio of work, but we are growing. Risk has gone through a big transformational shift in the last 3 years, and so we are adding more staff capacity-wise to undertake these very important projects.
And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to let us know. You can put it in the chat or we can address those at the end. So please, if you have any questions, write those down and we can definitely answer those. So again, kind of going down with the Rio Grande Basin or continuing, as you know, it's the fourth longest river in the US. It's about almost 2,000 miles in length. As you all know, it's a transboundary region. It's a basin. It's semi-arid. Again, as Martin was mentioning, it's a very water-stressed region. So imagine all these individuals, these millions of individuals all along the river that are depending on this water source, right? So because of that, obviously, because there's so many individuals that live along the border and live along this river, there is potential for pollution. So it is one of the 10 most endangered rivers in the world. And of course, Laredo ourselves, we are sandwiched between two reservoirs, which is Amistad and Falcon. So some of you may be familiar, especially based on the area that you all are in. So again, because it's such a large region, we do want to emphasize why it's so important that we bring in different individuals, different entities, organizations, that we get them involved and really try to emphasize why it's so important that we protect this river source. And again, one of those methods is getting our community involved. So what I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to show a brief clip. I'm not going to show the entire video. We started working a lot with youth, especially within the past. We've worked with youth in the past years, but this past year, we really tried to focus and do camps. We call them eco camps or eco explorers. So we really try to get our youth involved. That's something that I think is very important, is educating the youth and our kids, because that's something that they can carry with them. So I'll go ahead and show you a brief clip of some of the camps that we did. We actually did this during spring break.
Ash, since there's no audio, do you want to narrate what's happening?
I was wondering, I was like, if anybody can hear. All right, let me go ahead and play. So what you're seeing here, so again, the students, they completed different activities throughout the week. We had them actually create a monarch garden. So they were able to plant different native species. As we mentioned, the monarchs do come around here. So they were able to come in, the students were able to get involved. They were able to plant all these native species. So they were able to help us and revitalize this garden. This garden is located at the Laredo Water Museum. So it also provided information on why it's so important that we protect this river source. Here, what you're seeing, we had a group of middle school students. This is actually a location here in Laredo, Texas. One of our professors, the one that's pictured here, or that's in this video, he's talking about the importance of the river and about tree canopy and why it's important we have these native species and why they're preserved, because they provide that very needed shade. And so students were able to collect insects. They were able to create a journal about the flora and the fauna. So we think it was a pretty wonderful experience. And as we mentioned, we are home to the Laredo Birding Festival, one of the largest festivals here. The student here, he's talking about what he enjoyed about these camps, about being outdoors and be able to participate in these different activities. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it here and move on. But just to a summary, we were able to take students out into the lake and have them do different outdoor activities that a lot of these students don't typically do. So for example, they were able to kayak, they were able to fish, and they were able to do archery. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it here and I'm going to the next slide. Let me see. I might have to escape, so let me go ahead. And I'll start it here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen. So again, just to reemphasize, that video was just kind of showcasing the different things that we do with our community and our youth and how it's so important, because those experiences make an impact. Those are the memories that they take with them. So especially having you all, especially with the university, again, participating in the roundup, that's definitely a part of that experience. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, perfect. Can you all see my screen? Perfect. Okay. Awesome. So again, one of the things that we really emphasize with our programming is a community outreach. So here, as we mentioned, not only we do programs with youth, we also take individuals or community out to the river. So in October, I believe October 12th, we are taking people to actually kayak along the river. So we do not only the kayaking, we also do bird watching. We do different art exhibits. So example, you can see here is like the mural with the monarchs. We do cleanup, so that's another big one. We try to get people out into the community to do cleanups along these different areas. We have some beautiful areas along Laredo, especially along the river, Las Palmas, but of course they need care. These areas are very large, and we are, in terms of staff and with the city of Laredo, they are stressed. So we try to help them by organizing these different cleanups. We also have you can see up here, this is actually one of our kayak or one of our paddles. We can have up to 50 to 60 individuals out on the river paddling at once. One of the neat activities that we actually had about, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, about a year or two ago with the Border is Beautiful Festival. So again, is emphasizing not only the river, but the border as a cultural icon, what it represents for us with our identity, with our culture. So we had all these different individuals come in. We had different shows and different bands. It was really about getting our community out there and just re-emphasizing why it is that we need to celebrate this culture and celebrate the river and celebrate our border heritage. And as mentioned, one of the biggest things that we've seen that is most effective is community advocacy. So not only getting individuals involved in going to these different events, but is how can we give these individuals, these citizens, the power to make those decisions, to come to their local government and ask for the things that they need in their specific neighborhood. So one of the things that we've been doing, and this is actually the Azteca neighborhood. So this is one of the oldest neighborhoods here in Laredo, Texas. Through the Methodist Healthcare Ministries, we were able to implement a program to try to have these individuals get more involved. So we actually did. So here in this image in the lower left-hand corner, this Azteca neighborhood is actually right along the river. It's very close. Many of these individuals have lived there for their entire lives, right? So 50 years, 60 years, and had never actually visited the river. And again, that's only maybe about half a mile away. So again, is how do we give citizens the power to advocate for themselves? So not only us going out there and helping them, but is actually giving the skills to have them go to the government again and really ask for those things that they need. So one of the other things, of course, that we do is community art murals. So here you can see some images again, and you may see this along your area, but we are home to all these beautiful bird species. We're actually in the season where we have a lot of birds that are migrating through, a lot of tropical species. Because of that, we really try to emphasize why it's so important that these birds actually use the river source. That's why we have so many, right? Because they depend on this as a life source, right? Not only for food, but again, this is where they live. And we try to really emphasize that we need to put that importance on protecting not only the river, but everything that comes with it, right? All the organisms that depend on it. So again, we have our Laredo Birding Festival, and that really showcases that vibrant birding community that we have here. So again, we have our monarch garden. So this is a small initiative that I believe that anybody can do. We have about 4 gardens all around Laredo. And these monarch gardens, we get volunteers, we have them come in. As you can see in this top image, we actually created a monarch mural showing the life cycle of the monarch butterfly. So we actually look for different groups in Laredo to adopt these gardens. So this adoption really helps them in learning the process of taking care of a natural resource. How do they care for local native species? And actually getting them out there in the community, and of course, getting community service hours. So again, we have about 4 monarch gardens here in Laredo. And if anyone ever has questions on how you can start that initiative, even at your university or trying to get others involved, again, don't hesitate to let us know. We can definitely help with that process. And then, as I keep mentioning, we have our Laredo Birding Festival. So one of the things that we do, not only do we have the festival, we have a huge art contest, which is the Birds of the Brush art contest. I can definitely share that with you all, especially if there's any artists in the audience that would like to submit. So we have a huge festival in February. And the bottom right corner, that was actually our Best of Show for 2023. There are awards, and we hosted at the Laredo Center for the Arts. Again, it's just showcasing the South Texas birds that call this area home. We take individuals down to the river. One of the neat things is that we actually get a lot of individuals from all across the US. We even had some individuals, if I'm not mistaken, last year from Australia, from Canada, because of the diversity of the birds that we get here in this region. And again, that takes place in February. So if anybody wants to join us, you all are more than welcome. Or if there's any students who would like to submit to our bird contest, you all are more than welcome to submit. And we have a huge art exhibit where we invite the community to showcase all the different pieces that have been submitted. And then finally, I didn't want to finish before I pass it on to Martin. We have our real research roundup. So we had students from your campus or university get involved due to Dr. Ilan Echeverria. It's a beautiful initiative. We're going into our 15th year this year with our real research roundup. It started off with seed money from the EPA with just a couple thousand, and it's expanded to this huge program. So we have students not only in the US, but in Mexico, of course, all along to the headwaters in Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas that participate in this program. And again, the purpose of this program is to get students involved, youth involved, and having really emphasized the importance of water quality. Why is it important that the quality of the water is safe? And this is a great citizen science experiment and teaching students how and why this is so important. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe we're going to have a group of students from the university join us this year, and I'm so excited to see what they submit. Again, this is a great way to get everybody involved, and we hope we can continue this. And if you ever have questions on how we can get more campuses involved, that would be great. In the past couple of years, I've seen a huge interest, especially from our schools in Mexico, and they submit amazing pieces. So not only is it a water quality initiative, there's also an initiative in art and an art initiative where people or students can submit art pieces, and we showcase that as well. So again, please, if you have any questions, get involved. It's coming up very soon, and we're excited to get you all involved. And I'll go ahead and pass it on over now to Martin. He's going to discuss a little bit more about our water security program. So please, if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask us at the end.
Thank you, Ashley. So this is just a quick overview of the water security program that I talked about earlier that I get to oversee and manage. The program itself has several projects within the umbrella, under the umbrella of the program that I oversee. On the top left, we have I talked about this earlier, but this is the Binational Riverfront project. It was formerly called the Park, but the name has changed a little bit. But the Binational Riverfront project is essentially this visionary concept of what a binational green space, how it could exist between Laredo and Nuevo Laredo. This project was originally started in December of 2021 when the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, Ken Salazar, and the Mexican ambassador to the U.S., Esteban Moctezuma, actually visited Laredo during that time, and he approached they both approached our organization, and specifically Mr. Ambassador Salazar approached us and he said, I have this vision, my whole life I've had this vision for a binational green space that could exist between both countries, but I don't know what it looks like. I need your help to gather a group of stakeholders, both from all kinds of sectors, public, private, academic, nonprofit, and work together to envision this dream I've had for a long time. Ambassador Salazar actually grew up on the banks of the Rio Grande in Colorado, so the Rio Grande is his home. And he was also the former Secretary of the Interior when President Obama was in office a few years prior. Anyway, so we worked very closely with a lot of stakeholders from both Nuevo Laredo and Laredo to envision and the concepts that you now see on this slide. And what came of that was this Binational Riverfront initiative, which is, again, sort of a reimagining how the river could look like in this beautiful green space with trees and with art and with culture and with economic benefits, to both communities. And these are just some other photos of our workshops that we had with architects from all over the country that helped design this project. This project is still something we're pursuing. We did a lot of field visits to envision what this could look like on the ground, and integrating all kinds of very unique elements to it, such as our Community Water and Energy Resource Center, which is a form of wastewater recycling, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And I'll actually show some more pictures about a very interesting visit that we had from another university earlier this year. Next slide, please. Oh, and yes, there's one more. Ask if you could go back for a minute. Just related to this as well, there was a report that I published that's actually available on our website for anyone to read, that I worked. It was a 6-month study that I did to analyze how oil and gas impacts water usage here in Webb County, specifically here in South Texas. And this was a 10-year analysis that I looked at from 2010 to 2020, looking at very specific oil and gas companies here in South Texas that are actually extracting water from the river for these oil and gas operations. So you're welcome to look at that report. Next slide, please. So very quickly, related to like all of this work with water security, right? We do a lot of amazing initiatives, and a lot of the work cannot be done alone. We work with a lot of public and private stakeholders to, as you can see on the picture on the right, from elected officials to public and private representatives, city council members, county representatives. I mean, you name it. We work with all kinds of people and folks. We tie in a lot of the programs and projects that we and initiatives that we undertake are all tied together. So we always try to tie them in. How do they overlap or intersect with, for example, some of the projects or initiatives that Ashley talked about, like with our monarch gardens, protecting the monarch butterfly. The picture you see on the top left was actually a box car that made its way all the way from Canada to the sanctuaries, the santuarios in Michoacan, for the monarch butterfly. And it stopped. It was actually doing a tour, and it stopped in Laredo. And there was this big event with all these students and local leaders, mayors from both Laredo and Laredo. That this big wonderful event to promote the conservation of the monarch butterfly. And yeah, just amazing events overall. So yeah, this is all part of our water security program. Next slide. So, fun fact, earlier this year, the Harvard Graduate School of Design actually visited Laredo. They were here for a few weeks in February, 1 week, I'm sorry, in February. The reason the Harvard Graduate School of Design, which is I think one of the top, if not the top premier design school in the entire country, the reason they visited was because the school, and specifically one of the professors in this class, was able to successfully convince Harvard to undertake Laredo as a case study for understanding environmental resilience and sustainability. Part of a course that's called Creating Environmental Markets, essentially looking at ways that we can make cities more environmentally resilient while still benefiting both environmentally and economically from sustainable projects that are resilient and, sustainable. And so they were here for a week in February. We had them visit with all kinds of folks, stakeholders, elected officials, private, institutions, academic institutions in Laredo to understand Laredo and the culture and the environment. So it was an amazing visit. The students actually published a report that's also up on our website. It's not on the slide deck, but if you visit our website, they published a report based on their visit in May that you can read about, and so you can understand what they learned about Laredo and what projects they identified to make Laredo more environmentally resilient. Next slide. And this is a little bit of our climate program. As I talked about earlier, we are in the Eagle Ford Shale, which is one of the largest oil and gas shale producing areas in the country. As I mentioned, Webb County ranks usually in the top 3 for natural gas producing counties in the entire state of Texas, which is huge. As I mentioned, we're trying to look at flaring here in South Texas and understand what the impacts of flaring are. And we're actually publishing a report in collaboration with another nonprofit organization that we're very close to later this month. that'll also be up on our website, I think. And so we're trying to look at impacts of oil and gas, not to, say that oil and gas is something that should not be, pursued, or that's something that we don't need. Of course, I think there are benefits derived from oil and gas production. However, we understand as an environmental organization that there are emerging technologies, renewable energies, electrification, EVs that can help. Again, with the impacts of climate change, there are different ways in which we can reduce our dependence on these fossil fuels, and at the same time provide, for example, jobs in the green workforce, which unfortunately Laredo and South Texas does not have enough jobs in that economy. We there's wind power, there's solar power, but a lot of that training, a lot of those jobs are outsourced outside of Laredo, unfortunately, because Laredo does not have a strong workforce that is trained in those disciplines. So we're trying to work on that as well. Next slide. Oh, Ash, did we lose the school?
Hello.
I don't want
Maybe the internet is with problem in the auditorium. Wait, please, one moment.
Okay.
Conéctense, conéctense. Sí, conéctense otra vez. Ya les dije que yo estoy adentro todavía. Ya les dije que esperaran.
There we go. Ahí están todos. Los
You're back.
perdimos. We lost everybody.
Okay, perfect. All right. We're going to make sure that everybody is back, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Are we ready again?
No, I don't think you hear us.
Yes, we can hear you.
Gotcha, you can continue. Sorry.
Okay, no, you're good. We noticed we're like, it disappeared. We're going to go ahead and reshare our screen. So just give us a quick moment. Let's see. Share screen.
Okay, perfect. Can everyone see our screen? Thumbs up, hands up, yes? Okay, perfect. All right, so continuing very quickly where we left off, because I think we can open up the floor for questions after the presentation. As I mentioned earlier, this is part of our advocacy has to do also with um, um, dealing with threats, right, that threaten our river, our only life source. The Rio Grande is such an important feature here, and it's not only an environmental something to protect environmentally speaking, but also culturally, right? And so during the previous administration, we had a major fight against the border wall, which was a very real reality for us. I know in Matamoros and in Brownsville, the border wall has been actually built, and we sympathize with our allies, our brothers and sisters that did not see that project actually ended up being built. But here in Laredo had an amazing story that it actually stood up against the federal government and was able to stop that project from being built, stop the wall from being built in Laredo. Webb County remains the only county in the entire southern border in the United States that never got a border wall built because of the advocacy efforts that not only our organization undertook, but also other organizations like the No Border Wall Coalition, of which RISC was a part of, and our indigenous allies as well. And we had to undertake this massive campaign against this threat to our community, which was successful. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, just because we were able to stop it a few years ago does not mean this project is dead. If there is an administration change in November, this project may come back for round 2. So we will see what happens. But I guarantee that this organization, along with our allies, are ready to fight again to stop this project. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just more pictures of our fight against the border wall. We have been interviewed and been in articles published dozens of times. We've hosted community town halls to inform the public of the threats of this project. Unfortunately, a lot of what the border wall is and was is still under it's not discussed very much by the government. A lot of it is done, very much behind. A lot of these discussions happen behind closed doors, and the public isn't really informed very well. And so it's up to organizations like RISC and others to inform the public about what this project really means, what the impacts really mean, because it is a very environmentally destructive project, and some people simply don't realize the magnitude of what it means for them or their community or their property if the wall itself gets built. So we work very hard, and we are still working very hard to inform locals about this. Next slide. And very quickly, so I think this is a program or a project that will probably resonate with this class. In 2022 we launched what we call the Laredo Climate Cohort, which is we work every fall semester. We work with a group of college students to train them through various workshops and skills building, like photography, videography, advocacy, writing, storytelling, to train them to become the next generation of leaders to fight against climate change here in South Texas. This project was originally the seed funding for this project. If you look at the picture on the bottom right, that's actually former Vice President Al Gore, who took a picture with our director. His foundation, the Climate Reality Project, was actually the foundation that first funded this initial the first initial cohort in 2022. The picture on the top left and the bottom left are pictures from the first year when the original cohort of students was able to successfully petition the city council in Laredo to create the Climate Task Force, which is basically a advisory group to the city council that can advise them on climate issues here in Laredo, which was a huge achievement that had never been done before. And so we're still working. This year it's in its 3rd iteration of students. And so we hope to continue this project for many years, because I think it's an amazing project. And we work with a very small group of professionals, attorneys, activists, professors from the university that teach students about climate change and these issues here in South Texas. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, ethylene oxide, right? That very dangerous chemical that's used in sterilization. We have been launching and are still launching, actually. We started with the Clean Air Laredo Coalition, which is a group of concerned citizens that are working to fight against air pollution, or this public health threat here in Laredo concerning ethylene oxide. Specifically, it comes from this company called Midwest Sterilization. If you look at the picture on the top left, that's actually a protest that we held in 2022 outside the facility in Laredo, because there are major concerns about our air quality here in Laredo. What we were able to do last year, we actually were able to get funding from various public entities in Laredo, such as our city council, our county government, and some local school districts, and pull together these funding sources to do a very extensive 2.5-month or 2-month study on our air quality related to ethylene oxide emissions around the facility here in Laredo. That report will be published and actually shown publicly for the first time later this year. Actually, next week in October, on October 3rd, we're actually going to have a big community town hall to inform the public of what the results from this study were and what they can do to get involved in order to make sure that this company is in compliance and was able to actually reduce the level of emissions from ethylene oxide. And so there have been there's been lawsuits that have been filed. There have been petitions to the EPA. There's been public meetings held, meeting with a lot of elected officials about this issue. This is something that the community and our elected officials are taking very seriously, and so is the EPA. They're watching Laredo very closely about with this issue. So this is something definitely to keep an eye on. Next slide. I think we're almost done. I think we're towards the end of our slideshow, but this is just very quickly. We had earlier this year in April, we had a massive event, one-day event where we talked about the future of electrification here in South Texas. As I mentioned earlier, electrification is something that a lot of communities all over the country, not just on the border, are talking about. As EVs become more common and electrification, the building out of infrastructure, public infrastructure with electrification becomes more common. And so we hosted this big event with our local school, one of our local school districts. We worked with some of our colleagues to bring an electric school bus, which is the picture you see on the top left, fully electric school bus to showcase the benefits of EVs and what that can do for school districts as they work to diversify their fleets and again move away from fossil fuel type vehicles with electrification. So this is an amazing event, and we had a lot of people ask a lot of questions and curious about EVs, and now we're trying to work with some of these same partners to pursue funding and grants to purchase EVs and modernize these fleets with electric vehicles. Next slide. Ash, you want to close it out here?
Perfect. So that was a rundown or a summary. I know it might have been a little bit long, but of everything that we're doing right now. Again, it's quite extensive, the different projects, especially Martin. It's a lot of research, a lot of data heavy. So if there's anything that you're curious about for the profesores that are here, for the students that you want to know a little bit more, if you want more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us or send us an email. So our information is listed here on the main page or the slide that you can see here. So please, and I can send that over. The other thing that I recommend is follow us on our social media, either on Facebook, on Instagram, or Twitter. That's where you see a lot of the programs that we did. Like we mentioned, we did the Calor campaign. Right now we're doing ETO. So we're really trying to get more individuals in the community involved, and we invite everyone here to please come visit us as well. Again, we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this coming October and this coming November and October. So we have all these events that are coming up. And so if y'all are able to make it and show and come here, we would love to have you. Just let us know. We can definitely take you around and show you, like, especially the different events that are gonna be taking place. We're excited to have you. Before we finish off, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of myself and Martin and the Rio Grande International Study Center for having us today, for allowing us to give you this presentation and inform you about the different activities that we're doing and how we can possibly get you more involved. Before we finish, though, does anyone have any questions for either of us before we log off? And hopefully we can make an in-person visit in the future. But again, does anyone have any questions? And I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen as
First of
well.
all, Martin, thank you very much for the talk. Very interesting. We are I am personally surprised of all the things that you do. So congratulations, because it's a lot of work. And I know it involves a lot of time, a lot of pressure, but I can see it on your faces when you're explaining that you really enjoy what you do. And that's the best part. So I have some questions because we were broadcasting your presentation to our YouTube channel. And to some of our students, because we offer them, they are online. 1 week we have some students that come here at the campus, and some stay online taking classes. The ones from our zero term, because we have a zero term where they only learn English for a whole term to improve and learn English. So I have some questions here. The first of all, it's from from Valeria Salazar, and she says, what can we do as students to raise awareness of this issue that you are remarkably handling about the roundup at the Rio Grande?
Yes, of course. So I'll tackle this question a little bit and then I'll pass it over to Martin. Something that we've seen really effective, so we mentioned the climate cohort, is social media. You would be surprised how much of an impact social media can make. Our students, a part of the climate cohort that they do is they create these stories. So they interview individuals from the community. That's something else that has a big impact, is can you interview people who are getting impacted directly by these different events and showcasing those stories on socials and really emphasizing that the changes that are coming because of climate change is not just impacting a whole, it's also impacting the individual, right? How is it impacting an everyday person? How is it making it harder for them? So we've noticed that social media sharing stories is very impactful because it makes it more personal. So if you can include social media, if you can include individuals, community members, showing the story, really, I think has been, the most impactful for everything. And one of the things we're actually doing, and that could be something she can consider with a group of students, we're doing a community exhibition. And the climate cohort, what they're doing is that they're interviewing different individuals and they're going to take photographs and they're going to do an art exhibit and they're going to showcase the story and the photos. So the photos are going to showcase how the impact is being made and the negative side to it. So really, I think it's all about story, like showcasing the story, adding it on socials and making more people aware of the impact. Because I think sometimes when we come from it in a very scientific view, it's a little harder to grasp. But when you give the personal, like how is it impacting your mom? How is it impacting your grandmother? How is it impacting you? That I think has a much stronger effect. Martin, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that's a good summary, Ash. Like Ashley said, yeah, you have to tie into. I think climate change is something that some people may misunderstand or say, well, I don't know how this affects me, so by default, I shouldn't really care about it. But we try and bring a more on the ground perspective and say, because of this, these effects of climate change, this is why we're seeing, for example, prolonged droughts, and we have less water available, and that's why we're in water restrictions right now in stage 3 and so on. So we try and tie everything together. It's not easy sometimes, and it's very sometimes difficult to try and explain these very scientific and technical terms to the public, but we try and bring that level of explanation to a level that most people can understand.
And unfortunately, we only have about maybe like 5 minutes left, Martin, or Billy, because we're jumping into another meeting, but we'll try to answer as many questions as we can before we log off. So yeah, so community involvement, storytelling is very impactful for that. So thank you for that. Any other questions? We can definitely answer.
Oh, hello. Good morning. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question because what I hear from what I hear is that you oppose the border wall policy from the United States of America. And as far as I know, that policy was meant to protect the economy and security of the U.S. citizens. And I just want to know the reasons, which are the reasons you oppose that specific policy?
Right. So there are several reasons why, and that's a good question. Very quickly, the border wall is being implemented or was implemented primarily as a project to address a national security threat. Unfortunately, with the project itself, a lot of the times the narrative was misconstrued by the federal government, saying that there is this threat that exists, and we need to build this structure to address this national security threat of immigration, right? But more so, the threat itself the heart of it really has to do with the Rio Grande and the impacts that this river is seeing and has already seen from the building of such infrastructure. Okay, just very quickly, the border wall itself is an extremely environmentally destructive project. There are hundreds and thousands of acres that have already been torn down on riparian zones to build this infrastructure, okay? Unfortunately, what that has been doing to the river itself, a lot of that has been causing heavy erosion, okay? that erosion that is built as a result from the wall, that silt washes into the main channel of the river. Okay, we've seen this in the valley specifically. We've actually seen a lot of impacts about this. And actually, that silt fills in the channel, which silt, as you know, is a type of sediment that settles in a river channel or bed. And that what that does is increase or decrease the volume of water available in the river, which then increases evaporation rates, decreases transportation, increases transportation losses, and just has all these environmentally negative impacts. In addition, the wall itself, or the project itself, was, it was not something that, for example, the funding that was, the contracts that were being made available to build this wall, hundreds of millions of dollars were being spent on a project that could otherwise those funds could be used in much more needed issues that actually address these threats that the federal government was talking about. Like for example, instead of a wall, we could upgrade other types of technology or infrastructure with a project that is not as environmentally destructive. 1 mile of wall, okay, just for reference, I think was in the realm of millions of dollars. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. But those millions of dollars could be better spent, we believe, on investing, for example, in our river, looking at projects that can sustain the river, that increase our water supply, removing invasives, these other projects that have much more and better environmental benefits than destructive ones, if that makes sense. So there's many more reasons. I haven't gone into detail just for the sake of time, but that was one of the reasons that our organization, from the environmental perspective, that is, continues to remain opposed to this project.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to add to that as well is that we also work with Border Patrol quite a bit. So we try to work with them a lot, right? Especially with border security on how we can implement those strategies that are benefit the environment and maintain security. Because in the end, we have to find a balance, right? So it's important that there is still border security that is still an issue. So we have to be able to kind of merge those two and find a middle ground. So that's been one of the big challenges. And like Martín mentioned, is we try to find methods or ways that are going to be least impactful to the environment. So that's kind of just to give you a little middle ground. So yes, we also do have to have very open communication with border security. And that's been very beneficial for us because they tell us like their perspective and we can also give them ours.
Okay, Ashley, thank you very much. Do we have time for one more question or can we wrap this thing? Yes,
Yep.
We only have space for one more question.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, first of all, nice to meet you, all of you. It is a pleasure and honor that our universities can work together. And my question is like, first of all, and how did all the project get started, and what was that motivation to keep going?
I'm going to pass that question to Martín because Martín has been here longer and he's seen the evolution of risk, especially in the last 3 years. But I'll pass that question to Martín.
Yes, thank you. I think I understood. The question was how have a lot of our initiatives gotten started? Was that more or less the first part of the question? And how are we sustaining them?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Risk, as a nonprofit organization, we are primarily a grant-funded organization. Okay, a lot of the work that you just saw in our previous in our presentation, a lot of that work took years of hard work to apply for grants, apply for funding from all kinds of sources, government funding, through grants, private foundations, donations, memberships. All of that work took a long time to get that funding in place and convince our funders and people that we work with that these projects were worthy of investing in. A lot of times, it's very difficult to get what we call seed funding for a project. And speaking from experience, a lot of people or foundations or even other entities do not want to be the first entity to invest in a specific project. They want to see existing projects that already have funds invested in them. But it takes a lot of relationship building. I think that's the key to making these projects begin or take initiative. It's a lot of relationship building with our colleagues, with foundations and our funders and say, if you invest in this, you will, these benefits will be seen by this project in this particular way. And just sustaining all that is just continuing to go after these grants, right? Now, even though we are primarily a grant-funded organization, we have in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years tried to diversify. We are still continuing to diversify our funding sources because very quickly, for those that may not be intimately familiar with nonprofit operations, right, you have what's called restricted funding, which is when grants are awarded to risk, it doesn't mean, oh, we're swimming in millions of dollars in cash. That's not the way it really works. A lot of that is tied programmatically to very specific projects, and they can only be used for that very specific purpose, hence restricted funding. Unrestricted funding is just that. It's funding that isn't tied programmatically to a specific project, and we have much more flexibility and leeway to use those funds in different ways. That comes from primarily, for example, from donations, memberships, general public support for our organization. So the more we can diversify our funding streams, our revenue, the more projects we're able to implement. And really, to do the projects that we really want to put a lot of effort in, and for example, make the roundup, this huge event, we need additional funding. And that can really come from grants or unrestricted funding. But sustaining that into the future is not easy, I will say. Writing grants and pursuing funding is a lot of effort and takes a lot of time. But we're still here out doing it after 30 years, and I think we're going to continue to do it another 30 years, if not more.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, we get told no. It's happened before. We submit these grants, right? And you're writing and you're putting all this time into like creating a narrative and a story, and we still get told no. But again, just to kind of emphasize, we believe in what we're doing, right? Like we said, we're one of the only nonprofits, environmental nonprofits here in South Texas. We see the importance of preserving the river, and we believe that if someone's going to do it, it needs to be us, right? Because who else is going to do that work? And in the end, the work that we do not just benefits us, but benefits our communities, all the communities along the river. So again, we really want to just emphasize that the Rio Grande, the Rio Bravo is a shared basin, right? And we need to protect it, right? There needs to be this advocacy around the river. And I think that's one of the things that definitely motivates us, is because not a lot of people are putting that emphasis, and we want people to really care. We want people to see the importance and why it's needed for us to advocate, right? And so inspiring, and honestly, it starts with you all, our youth, right? Our students and our professors, and inspiring that in all of you, because you all are going to be our future. As corny as that sounds, and as I'm sure you've heard it many times before, you really are going to be the ones to make the changes for the future, for a much more positive future. So don't worry, it's hard. We have been told no, but we have to keep trying, right? So that way, with these projects that we really believe in can take fruition.
Okay, thank you very much, Ashley. So once again, on behalf of our Chancellor, Maestra Diana Mazo Quintana, and our directors here present, we thank you for being here. It was a really interesting talk. We learned a lot, and definitely we will see you on October 21st to the 25th.
Yay. Okay, perfect. Yes, I'm excited to get your students involved. Yes, send us pictures. Thank you all so much again for this time, for meeting us. And please, I will send you our emails in case any other questions pop up or you want those resources, and we can share that.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And we also prepare a little diploma for you and Martin for your participation. I think they're going to share it here. I think it says that we cannot share the screen. Can you give us permission to share the screen and show you the diplomas that we prepared for you? Really for you?
I think it's enabled now.
Because they have their break right now at 10 o'clock. And we are already hungry. So let's hurry.
I think I made you co-host. You should be able to share.
Okay, let's see if they can share the diploma. So that's Ashley's diploma, okay? For your participation in the Rio Research Roundup talk, promoting the environmental conscious and the scientific research on the Rio Grande Roundup. Your work has a direct impact in the health of our ecosystem and the quality of life of our community. Maestra Diana Mazo Quintana, Matamoros, Tamaulipas, September 25th,
Thank
2024.
you.
And
Wow.
an applause, Ashley, applause.
Thank you. Wow, I love it. I can't wait to get it.
And then we also prepare a diploma for Mr. Martin Castro. Martin, so thank you very much for being here. And we also have the diploma that the chancellor prepared for you as a thank you for giving us that very interesting and important talk to raise awareness on our students. And there you have that's Miss Ashley's. That's the second one. The second one. There you go. So Mr. Martin can take a screenshot. And show up to.
I don't think, Professor, I can see it, but it's okay. I mean, I can know. I Ashley can share a picture of it after the meeting.
Yeah, and I will definitely email them to you as
Yes,
as soon
that
as
would be.
the meeting is over. Okay, there you have it, Martin. Thank you very much.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, thank you all again for your time. We appreciate it. And again, as I mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out to us for any questions. And thank you for the recognition. We really appreciate that. It was very kind of all of you.
Thank you very much. And once again, we'll see you definitely on October 21st. Have
Yes.
a very good day, and thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you
Same
very
to you all.
Alrighty. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.